Emotion is fast. Discipline is steady. Emotion reacts. Discipline decides. Emotion fluctuates. Discipline holds. Most people live from feeling. That is why they remain unstable. This audiobook is about one principle. Discipline beats emotion. Not sometimes. Daily. Calm control over impulse. Standards over mood. Action over feeling. When discipline leads, life stabilizes. Everything changes when you enforce it. Mood changes daily. Sometimes hourly. You wake up energized. By noon you feel distracted. By evening you feel tired. If your behavior follows mood, your results will fluctuate. That is the problem. Most people obey how they feel. They work when motivated. They delay when bored. They withdraw when uncomfortable. They call this honesty. It is instability. That's the key. Mood cannot be the authority over your behavior. You have a choice. Let feeling dictate action. Or let standards dictate action. Long-term progress requires stability. Emotion is unstable. It reacts to sleep. It reacts to stress. It reacts to environment. If emotion leads, your direction shifts constantly. Shifting direction weakens identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior determines outcome. Everything connects. Acting from feeling creates inconsistent effort. Inconsistent effort produces uneven results. Uneven results damage confidence. Damaged confidence increases emotional sensitivity. Sensitivity increases reaction. The cycle repeats. You must interrupt it. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about discipline. Suppression denies what you feel. Discipline regulates how you respond. There is a difference. When you feel tired, you acknowledge it. You do not obey it blindly. When you feel irritated, you notice it. You do not express it impulsively. When you feel unmotivated, you observe it. You still execute your standard. That is control. Most people wait to feel ready before acting. Ready rarely arrives. Feeling prepared is emotional permission. You do not need emotional permission to act. You don't need their permission either. Your standard is enough. If you decided to begin at a certain time, you begin. Not because you feel inspired. Because you committed. Commitment replaces mood as authority. Authority stabilizes behavior. Stability builds strength. Mood-driven action also creates internal confusion. One day you are disciplined. The next day you are reactive. You start questioning your identity. You begin to doubt yourself. Doubt weakens resolve. Resolve weakened increases emotional obedience. Everything connects. Stillness is your first tool. When feeling rises strongly, pause. Do not act immediately. Slow your breathing. Relax your posture. Observe the sensation without labeling it as truth. Feeling is data. It is not instruction. That's the key. Data informs. It does not command. When you separate observation from reaction, you gain space. Space allows choice. Choice restores control. Control strengthens discipline. You have a choice. Follow the emotion. Or follow the rule. Rules provide stability. Emotion provides fluctuation. If your goal is long-term growth, stability wins. Most mistakes happen during emotional peaks. Excitement causes overcommitment. Frustration causes withdrawal. Anxiety causes hesitation. None of these states are reliable guides. You must act from principle. Principle is decided in advance. It does not change because your mood shifts. When you feel bored, you continue. When you feel resistance, you continue. When you feel discomfort, you regulate and continue. Not aggressively. Deliberately. Calm execution builds confidence. Confidence reduces emotional volatility. Reduced volatility supports discipline. It's not about intensity. It's about discipline. Intensity feels powerful. Discipline is powerful. Intensity fades. Discipline repeats. Repeated action shapes identity. Identity shapes future behavior. Over time, something changes. You stop asking how you feel. You start asking what is required. That shift transforms your results. Required action is objective. Feeling is subjective. Subjective states are unstable. Objective standards hold. Most people live inside their feelings. They amplify them. They justify them. They defend them. You do not need to defend every emotion. You need to regulate it. Regulation is strength. Strength builds authority. Authority over yourself is foundational. Without it, discipline collapses. With it, progress compounds. You have a choice. Remain emotionally reactive. Or become structurally disciplined. Structural discipline simplifies life. Fewer internal debates. Less hesitation. More steady action. Steady action compounds. Compound progress builds confidence. Confidence reinforces discipline. Discipline stabilizes identity. Identity defines outcomes. Stop obeying how you feel. Observe. Regulate. Execute your standard. Repeat tomorrow. This is how discipline begins to beat emotion. Now that you understand mood cannot lead, you must learn how to prevent reaction from escalating when emotion rises. Reaction feels immediate. It feels justified. It feels honest. Most people believe that if they feel something strongly, they must express it quickly. That belief destroys control. That's the key. Immediate reaction amplifies emotion. When something triggers you, your body responds first. Breathing changes. Muscles tighten. Thoughts accelerate. If you act in that state, you magnify instability. Instability spreads fast. One sharp response creates tension. Tension influences tone. Tone influences decisions. Decisions influence outcomes. Everything connects. You have a choice. React instantly. Or pause deliberately. Pause is not weakness. It is strength. It creates space between stimulus and response. Space allows clarity. Clarity protects discipline. Most damage happens in seconds. A message is misinterpreted. A comment feels disrespectful. A delay feels personal. You respond emotionally. Now you must repair what discipline could have prevented. Repair consumes energy. Energy lost weakens consistency. Consistency is built through regulation. Stillness is your advantage. When emotion rises, you slow your breathing. Inhale calmly. Exhale longer. Relax your shoulders. This interrupts escalation. Escalation thrives on speed. Slow pace weakens it. That's the key. Emotion loses power when you delay response. Most people speak at the peak of feeling. Peak emotion distorts judgment. Distorted judgment creates unstable decisions. Unstable decisions weaken authority. Authority sustains discipline. You do not need their permission to pause. You are allowed to think before responding. Silence can be strategic. Measured delay communicates control. Control commands respect. Respect strengthens influence. Influence improves outcomes. Reaction also escalates internally. You replay the moment. You rehearse arguments. You justify emotion repeatedly. Internal reaction drains focus. Drained focus reduces execution quality. Reduced quality increases frustration. Frustration fuels more reaction. The cycle grows. You interrupt it early. At the first sign of tension, you pause. You do not wait for explosion. Early regulation requires less effort. Late regulation requires damage control. Damage control wastes time. Time lost weakens structure. Structure protects daily control. It's not about suppression. It's about discipline. Suppression buries emotion. Discipline manages it. Management creates stability. Stability strengthens identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior determines outcome. You have a choice. Let emotion lead. Or let regulation lead. Regulation must become habit. Pause before speaking. Pause before sending. Pause before deciding. Same pattern every time. Repetition builds automatic control. Automatic control reduces volatility. Reduced volatility sustains consistency. Most people justify reaction by calling it authenticity. Authenticity without discipline becomes chaos. Chaos destroys stability. Stability builds strength. When you pause, you gather information. You observe facts. You separate interpretation from reality. Interpretation is often emotional. Reality is often neutral. Clarity improves when you delay. Delay increases precision. Precision strengthens authority. Authority reinforces discipline. Under pressure, pause even more deliberately. Urgency creates mistakes. Mistakes increase stress. Stress increases reactivity. Break the chain. Slow down. Even 3 breaths change the state of your nervous system. That is not symbolic. It is biological. Controlled breathing lowers intensity. Lower intensity improves judgment. Better judgment protects standards. Standards sustain daily control. You have a choice. Escalate the moment. Or stabilize it. Stabilization builds confidence. Confidence reduces emotional volatility. Reduced volatility strengthens discipline. Discipline beats emotion when reaction is regulated. You stopped obeying how you feel. Now you understand that reaction must be delayed and controlled. Next, you must build a structure that does not bend when emotion rises. If your rules move, emotion wins. That is the reality. Most people believe they have standards. In truth, they have preferences. Preferences shift with mood. Standards do not. That's the key. Discipline requires rules that do not bend under feeling. You wake up with intention. You plan the day. You commit to action. Then emotion enters. You feel tired. You feel distracted. You feel resistant. You adjust the rule. Adjustment becomes habit. Habit reshapes identity. Identity defines behavior. Everything connects. You have a choice. Live by preference. Or live by principle. Preference says, I will work when I feel ready. Principle says, I begin at the time I decided. Preference says, I will respond when I feel calm. Principle says, I pause before speaking. Preference fluctuates. Principle stabilizes. If you want stability, you must choose principle. Rules that do not move remove internal debate. Debate drains attention. Attention drained weakens execution. Execution weakened reduces confidence. Reduced confidence invites emotional obedience. The cycle strengthens. You interrupt it with clarity. Wake time is fixed. Focus block is fixed. Response pattern is fixed. Completion rule is fixed. Not extreme. Consistent. You don't need their permission to hold your standards. Even if others operate loosely. Even if the environment is chaotic. Your discipline is internal. Internal structure builds external stability. Most inconsistency begins with small exceptions. Just today. Only this time. It does not matter. It always matters. Small compromises accumulate. Accumulation reshapes identity. Identity determines long-term outcome. Stillness strengthens your ability to enforce rules. When resistance appears, pause. Observe the urge to bend the rule. Feel it fully. Do not act on it immediately. Emotion fades when not reinforced. Reaction strengthens it. That's the key. Enforcement builds authority. Authority over yourself defines strength. Rules must be simple. Complex systems fail under stress. Simplicity survives pressure. If you complicate your standards, emotion finds loopholes. Loopholes invite negotiation. Negotiation weakens discipline. Define clear behaviors. Begin work at a specific time. Pause before responding to tension. Finish defined tasks before switching. No internal vote. You have a choice. Lower your standard when tired. Or protect it especially when tired. Fatigue reveals structure. If your rule collapses when energy dips, it was never solid. Solid standards carry you when mood fluctuates. Mood cannot be the deciding factor. Mood is temporary. Principle is stable. It's not about intensity. It's about discipline. Intensity surges. Discipline holds. Holding builds confidence. Confidence reduces emotional volatility. Reduced volatility supports consistency. Most people respect discipline in theory. Few enforce it daily. Enforcement requires restraint. Restraint requires awareness. Awareness grows through repetition. Every time you follow your rule despite resistance, identity strengthens. Every time you bend it, identity weakens. Identity is built through repetition. Repetition defines default behavior. Default behavior defines your life. You must stop evaluating rules based on comfort. Comfort is unreliable. Comfort often protects weakness. Strength develops through consistency. Consistency requires stability. Stability requires rules that do not move. You have a choice. Adapt your standards to your feelings. Or adapt your feelings to your standards. One path produces volatility. The other produces authority. Authority creates calm. Calm improves decision-making. Better decisions reinforce discipline. Discipline beats emotion when structure leads. You stopped obeying how you feel. You learned to pause before reacting. Now you understand that only fixed standards protect you under pressure. Next, you must confront comfort directly. Because comfort is the quiet partner of emotion. Comfort feels harmless. It feels deserved. It feels reasonable. That is why it is dangerous. Most people do not fail because of catastrophe. They fail because they choose comfort over action. That's the key. Comfort protects emotion. Discipline protects progress. When discomfort appears, your mind looks for relief. Delay. Distraction. Excuse. You justify it quietly. You tell yourself it is minor. Small comfort choices accumulate. Accumulation reshapes identity. Identity defines long-term behavior. Everything connects. You have a choice. Move toward discomfort deliberately. Or retreat into comfort automatically. Retreat trains weakness. Approach builds strength. Discomfort often signals growth. New skill feels awkward. Focused work feels demanding. Silence feels unfamiliar. These sensations are not danger. They are adaptation. Most people misinterpret discomfort as a stop signal. It is rarely a stop signal. It is often a training signal. It's not about pain. It's about discipline. Pain can be harmful. Discomfort is often necessary. You must learn to distinguish between them. Discomfort says, "This is difficult." Danger says, "This is unsafe." Most daily resistance is difficulty, not danger. When you feel the urge to avoid, pause. Notice the sensation in your body. Observe it calmly. Do not label it as threat. Stay present. Stillness weakens the urge to escape. Reaction strengthens it. That's the key. What you face deliberately loses power. Comfort is seductive because it is immediate. Action is demanding because it is long-term. Long-term results require short-term discomfort. If you want stability, you must accept temporary tension. Most people negotiate at the first sign of effort. They reduce the task. They postpone the challenge. They switch to something easier. Switching trains avoidance. Avoidance weakens confidence. Confidence weakened increases emotional obedience. The cycle repeats. You interrupt it by acting anyway. Not aggressively. Calmly. Steadily. You don't need their permission to choose discipline over ease. You are allowed to pursue progress quietly. Comfort also appears socially. You soften your tone to avoid tension. You delay decisions to avoid conflict. You stay silent to avoid discomfort. Avoidance feels peaceful. It often creates larger problems later. Measured action prevents escalation. Escalation costs more than discomfort. When pressure rises, comfort suggests withdrawal. Discipline suggests engagement with control. Control reduces fear. Fear reduces clarity. Clarity improves execution. Execution builds confidence. Confidence stabilizes emotion. You have a choice. Choose immediate relief. Or choose long-term strength. Relief fades quickly. Strength compounds. Compounding creates visible progress. Visible progress reinforces discipline. Stillness supports this choice. When the urge to retreat appears, pause. Slow your breathing. Stay with the sensation. Then take the next defined step. Not the entire challenge. Just the next action. Action reduces fear. Fear magnifies when avoided. Magnification increases emotional intensity. Intensity disrupts control. Everything connects. Comfort also disguises laziness as self-care. Rest is strategic. Avoidance is emotional. Learn the difference. Rest restores energy. Avoidance delays responsibility. Responsibility strengthens identity. Identity defines who you become. If you consistently choose comfort, you train instability. If you consistently choose action, you train discipline. Discipline beats emotion when discomfort is accepted. Emotion seeks ease. Discipline seeks alignment. Alignment builds integrity. Integrity strengthens authority. Authority stabilizes behavior. You stopped obeying mood. You paused before reacting. You set rules that do not move. Now you confront comfort directly. Next, you must understand how emotion escapes through tone and expression under pressure. Tone reveals control. You may hold your actions steady. You may complete your tasks. You may follow your standards. Then pressure rises. Your tone shifts. Your voice tightens. Your words sharpen. That is where emotion leaks. That's the key. Discipline must control expression, not just behavior. Most people believe content matters more than tone. It does not. Tone shapes interpretation. Tone escalates conflict. Tone communicates stability or volatility. If your tone is unstable, your discipline is incomplete. You have a choice. Express emotion freely, or regulate your delivery deliberately. When pressure increases, your nervous system reacts. Breathing shortens. Speech speeds up. Volume rises. If you speak in that state, you amplify tension. Tension multiplies. Multiplication increases stress. Stress weakens clarity. Clarity protects control. Stillness must enter before speech. Pause. Breathe slowly. Relax your jaw. Lower your volume intentionally. These are trained behaviors, not personality traits. Most people defend their tone by saying they were honest. Honesty without regulation creates damage. Damage consumes time. Time lost disrupts progress. Progress requires stability. It's not about silence. It's about discipline. Discipline shapes how you communicate. Measured tone reduces escalation. Reduced escalation preserves energy. Preserved energy sustains daily control. Under pressure, speak slower than usual. Slower speech signals control. Controlled pacing lowers emotional intensity. Lower intensity sharpens thinking. Sharpened thinking improves decisions. Better decisions reinforce discipline. You don't need their permission to slow down. You are allowed to regulate before responding. Silence for a few seconds is powerful. It prevents unnecessary words. Unnecessary words create unnecessary problems. Problems drain focus. Focus supports consistency. Most emotional mistakes happen through tone. A slight edge in your voice. A rushed response. A defensive phrase. These small signals weaken authority. Authority depends on composure. Composure builds respect. Respect improves influence. Influence shapes outcomes. Everything connects. You must also regulate internal tone. How you speak to yourself matters. Harsh self-criticism destabilizes emotion. Destabilized emotion weakens discipline. Correction should be firm, not hostile. Hostility fuels shame. Shame reduces motivation. Reduced motivation increases avoidance. Avoidance disrupts consistency. When you make a mistake, adjust calmly. Identify the error. Correct the behavior. Move forward. No emotional drama. Drama drains energy. Energy preserved strengthens execution. You have a choice. Let pressure dictate your tone. Or let discipline shape it. Tone under pressure defines identity. Anyone can sound calm when nothing is at stake. Composure during conflict reveals structure. Structure protects control. Control sustains progress. Practice deliberate speech daily. Pause before responding. Lower your pace. Reduce volume slightly. Choose precise words. Precision strengthens clarity. Clarity reinforces discipline. Discipline beats emotion when expression is regulated. Emotion wants release. Discipline chooses timing. Timing shapes impact. Impact determines result. Result influences confidence. Confidence stabilizes behavior. You stopped obeying how you feel. You paused before reacting. You set rules that do not move. You chose action over comfort. Now you understand that tone must remain controlled under pressure. Next, you must remove the internal debate that weakens discipline quietly. Emotional negotiation is subtle. It does not shout. It whispers. You know your standard. You know what must be done. Then a thought appears. Not today. Just this once. I deserve a break. That whisper weakens discipline. That's the key. Negotiation erodes control from the inside. Most inconsistency is not external. It is internal debate. You argue with your own rules. You soften them. You adjust them slightly. Small adjustments compound. Compounding reshapes identity. Identity determines outcome. Everything connects. You have a choice. Protect the rule. Or negotiate with emotion. Negotiation feels rational. It presents comfort as logic. It frames delay as wisdom. But delay often trains avoidance. Avoidance weakens confidence. Confidence weakened increases emotional obedience. The cycle strengthens. You interrupt it early. When the thought appears, pause. Do not engage it. Observe it without agreeing. Let it pass. Then execute your standard. Stillness is powerful here. When you slow your breathing, emotional intensity decreases. Lower intensity weakens the argument. The mind loses urgency. Urgency fuels negotiation. Remove urgency. Remove debate. It's not about force. It's about discipline. Force creates internal resistance. Discipline creates alignment. Alignment reduces friction. Reduced friction strengthens consistency. Most people believe flexibility is strength. Unstructured flexibility invites instability. Instability weakens daily control. Non-negotiable standards simplify life. Fewer decisions. Less mental clutter. More steady execution. You don't need their permission to enforce your own rule. Even if others are relaxed. Even if no one is watching. Integrity is internal. Integrity builds authority. Authority over yourself defines strength. Negotiation often increases when you are tired. Fatigue lowers resistance. That is when discipline matters most. If your rule collapses under mild discomfort, it was never solid. Solid standards hold under pressure. Pressure reveals structure. Structure protects identity. You have a choice. Lower your standard when emotion rises. Or reinforce it especially when emotion rises. Reinforcement builds resilience. Resilience sustains consistency. Remove phrases like just this once. Replace them with execution. Execution builds confidence. Confidence reduces volatility. Reduced volatility strengthens discipline. Negotiation also appears in small tasks. I will skip the workout. I will delay the call. I will adjust the schedule. Each minor exception weakens pattern integrity. Pattern integrity sustains daily control. Break the pattern often enough and identity shifts. You must guard patterns carefully. Stillness helps here again. When resistance appears, breathe slowly. Observe the discomfort. Do not dramatize it. Take the next small step. Small action dissolves hesitation. Hesitation fuels debate. Debate erodes control. Everything connects. Discipline beats emotion when negotiation ends. Emotion demands flexibility. Discipline demands alignment. Alignment creates stability. Stability builds authority. Authority strengthens identity. You stopped obeying mood. You paused before reacting. You set rules that do not move. You chose action over comfort. You regulated your tone under pressure. Now you eliminate internal debate. Next, you must protect the resource that emotion attacks constantly. Your focus. Focus is fragile when mood is unstable. You may have clear standards. You may have strong intentions. If your attention shifts with emotion, discipline weakens. That's the key. Focus must not follow mood. Most people concentrate when they feel motivated. When energy is high, they work. When energy dips, they drift. They scroll. They switch tasks. They rationalize distraction. This trains inconsistency. Inconsistency weakens identity. Identity shapes long-term behavior. Everything connects. You have a choice. Focus only when you feel ready. Or focus because it is scheduled. Scheduled focus builds reliability. Reliability stabilizes output. Stable output strengthens confidence. Confidence reduces emotional volatility. Volatility disrupts discipline. Mood-driven attention is unpredictable. Excitement leads to overcommitment. Boredom leads to avoidance. Frustration leads to distraction. None of these states should control your focus. You must separate feeling from task. When you sit down to work, mood is irrelevant. The only question is execution. You don't need their permission to protect your concentration. Silence notifications. Close unnecessary tabs. Remove your phone from reach. These are not dramatic acts. They are structural protections. Structure reduces temptation. Reduced temptation strengthens discipline. Stillness is critical here. When boredom appears, pause. Notice the urge to check something. Feel the discomfort without reacting. Return to the task. Return again. Return repeatedly. Repetition trains focus. Focus becomes stronger when tested. If you switch tasks at the first sign of resistance, you train fragmentation. Fragmentation weakens depth. Depth produces quality. Quality builds confidence. Confidence sustains discipline. You must also protect focus from emotional rumination. Anger replays conversations. Anxiety imagines outcomes. Comparison fuels insecurity. These internal distractions drain attention. When they arise, observe them. Do not follow them. Redirect gently to the task. Redirection is discipline in motion. It's not about intensity. It's about discipline. Intensity fades. Discipline returns focus repeatedly. Mood will fluctuate during the day. You may feel tired at noon. You may feel restless at 3. You may feel irritated at 5. Focus remains the same. One task. Define time block. Completion before switching. Consistency builds cognitive strength. Cognitive strength stabilizes behavior. Stable behavior builds authority. Authority defines daily control. Most people underestimate how much distraction costs. Each switch reduces depth. Each interruption resets rhythm. Rhythm is essential for sustained output. When rhythm breaks, frustration increases. Frustration fuels more distraction. The cycle repeats. You interrupt it by enforcing boundaries. Scheduled breaks. Defined work intervals. No emotional override. If the block is 30 minutes, you complete 30 minutes. No negotiation. You have a choice. Let your focus drift with emotion. Or anchor it with structure. Anchored focus builds calm. Calm strengthens clarity. Clarity improves decisions. Better decisions reinforce discipline. Discipline beats emotion when attention remains stable. Emotion wants novelty. Discipline wants alignment. Alignment builds progress. Progress strengthens identity. Identity sustains daily control. You stopped obeying mood. You paused before reacting. You set rules that do not move. You chose action over comfort. You controlled your tone. You removed negotiation. Now you defend focus from emotional fluctuation. Next, you must ensure that feeling does not determine whether you finish what you begin. Starting is easy when you feel motivated. Finishing is difficult when feeling fades. Most people begin with intensity. They lose momentum when emotion drops. They stop. Stopping becomes pattern. Pattern becomes identity. Identity shapes results. That's the key. Discipline is proven at the point of fatigue, not at the point of excitement. You have a choice. Finish only when you feel engaged. Or finish because you committed. Commitment must outlast emotion. Emotion is temporary. Commitment is structural. When you start a task, you must define what completion means. Clear endpoints prevent endless drift. Drift weakens confidence. Confidence weakened increases hesitation. Hesitation fuels emotional obedience. Everything connects. Most unfinished work is not caused by lack of skill. It is caused by loss of interest. Interest fluctuates. Standards must not. When boredom appears, pause. Observe the sensation. Do not label it as signal to quit. Stay with the task. Complete the defined segment. Completion builds trust. Trust stabilizes identity. Identity sustains discipline. You don't need their permission to stay focused when others move on. You are allowed to complete what you begin. Even when it is repetitive. Even when it is quiet. Stillness helps here. When the urge to switch appears, slow your breathing. Relax your body. Return attention deliberately. Return again. Repetition trains endurance. Endurance builds strength. Strength reinforces discipline. It's not about excitement. It's about discipline. Excitement fuels starting. Discipline fuels finishing. Finishing strengthens self-respect. Self-respect reduces internal doubt. Doubt often leads to abandonment. Abandonment weakens consistency. Consistency defines progress. Most people underestimate the psychological weight of unfinished tasks. Open loops consume attention. Attention consumed weakens focus on new work. Weak focus reduces quality. Reduced quality increases frustration. Frustration fuels more abandonment. Close the loop. Even small completions matter. Write the page. Send the email. Complete the set. Defined completion resets mental space. Reset mental space sharpens clarity. Clarity improves performance. Performance reinforces discipline. You have a choice. Chase novelty. Or build reliability. Novelty excites briefly. Reliability compounds long-term. Compounding builds confidence. Confidence stabilizes emotion. Stable emotion strengthens control. Finishing regardless of feeling also trains resilience. Resilience reduces dependence on mood. Mood becomes background noise. Standards become foreground authority. When you consistently finish, identity shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who starts and stops. You see yourself as someone who completes. That shift changes behavior. Behavior shapes outcome. Outcome reinforces identity. Everything connects. Fatigue is not permission to quit. Fatigue is signal to regulate pace. Adjust speed if needed. Do not abandon direction. Direction must remain stable. Stable direction builds progress. Progress builds discipline. Discipline beats emotion when completion becomes non-negotiable. Emotion will suggest stopping. It will argue for comfort. It will rationalize delay. You pause. You regulate. You execute the final step. No drama. No aggression. Calm enforcement. You stopped obeying mood. You paused before reacting. You set rules that do not move. You chose action over comfort. You controlled tone. You removed negotiation. You protected focus. Now you ensure feeling does not interrupt completion. Next, you must understand how discipline strengthens when repeated daily. One disciplined action is not enough. One controlled day is not enough. One calm response is not enough. Consistency defines strength. That's the key. Discipline must be repeated daily to overpower emotion. Emotion is persistent. It rises again tomorrow. It shifts next week. It appears in new forms. If discipline is occasional, emotion regains control. Repetition changes identity. Identity stabilizes behavior. Behavior shapes outcome. Everything connects. You have a choice. Be disciplined when convenient. Or be disciplined every day. Convenience produces fluctuation. Daily repetition builds structure. Structure protects control. Most people rely on intense effort. They commit strongly for a short time. They lose energy. They drift. Intensity fades quickly. Repetition sustains momentum. Momentum reduces resistance. Reduced resistance strengthens discipline. It's not about willpower. It's about discipline. Willpower spikes. Discipline repeats. Daily repetition does not require dramatic action. It requires predictable action. Wake at the same time. Pause before reacting. Complete defined tasks. Protect focus blocks. Simple behaviors. Repeated. Without emotional drama. Each repetition strengthens neural patterns. Patterns become habits. Habits define default behavior. Default behavior defines your life. You don't need their permission to stay consistent. Even if others relax their standards. Even if progress feels slow. Slow progress with repetition is powerful. Fast progress without repetition collapses. Most people underestimate the effect of small daily control. They seek breakthrough moments. Breakthroughs are built on repetition. Without foundation, breakthroughs fade. Foundation requires daily enforcement. You have a choice. Reset weekly. Or build daily. Resetting weakens confidence. Daily execution builds trust. Trust reduces emotional volatility. Reduced volatility strengthens discipline. When discipline repeats daily, emotion loses authority. Emotion still appears. It no longer dictates. You observe it. You regulate it. You continue. That rhythm is powerful. Repetition also reduces friction. When behavior becomes familiar, resistance decreases. Familiarity creates comfort with discipline. Discipline becomes natural. Natural behavior requires less energy. Less energy increases sustainability. Sustainability defines long-term success. Most inconsistency comes from irregular enforcement. Rules followed on Monday. Ignored on Tuesday. Reinforced on Wednesday. Softened on Thursday. Identity becomes confused. Confusion weakens commitment. Commitment stabilized through repetition strengthens identity. Identity shapes automatic response. Automatic response reduces emotional interference. Everything connects. Daily repetition must include regulation. Pause before speaking. Slow breathing under stress. Measured tone in conflict. Same pattern every time. Consistency in small behaviors compounds into strong character. Character stabilizes performance. Stable performance builds confidence. Confidence reduces emotional obedience. Discipline beats emotion when repetition is relentless. Relentless does not mean extreme. It means consistent. Calm. Unemotional. Predictable. You have a choice. Liven cycles of intensity and collapse. Or build steady daily control. Steady control compounds quietly. Quiet progress becomes visible over time. Visible progress reinforces discipline. Discipline strengthens identity. Identity defines destiny. You stopped obeying mood. You paused before reacting. You set rules that do not move. You chose action over comfort. You controlled tone. You removed negotiation. You protected focus. You finished what you began. Now you understand repetition is the amplifier. Next, you must anchor discipline so deeply that emotion never regains authority. Impulse is immediate. Principle is deliberate. Impulse reacts to the moment. Principle acts from decision. If impulse leads, emotion wins. If principle leads, discipline wins. That's the key. Your life stabilizes when principle overrides impulse. Most people live in reaction. They feel something. They respond instantly. They adjust direction based on temporary emotion. Temporary emotion produces temporary progress. Temporary progress collapses. Collapse weakens confidence. Weak confidence increases emotional obedience. Everything connects. You have a choice. Live from impulse. Or live from principle. Impulse says act now. Principle says pause first. Impulse says defend. Principle says regulate. Impulse says seek comfort. Principle says follow the standard. When you live from principle, behavior becomes predictable. Predictable behavior builds trust. Trust strengthens identity. Identity sustains discipline. Principle must be decided in advance. You do not invent it during stress. You define it clearly. How you wake. How you work. How you speak. How you finish. These decisions anchor identity. Anchor identity and impulse loses influence. You don't need their permission to remain steady. Even when others escalate. Even when emotion rises strongly. Principle is internal. It is not dependent on environment. Environment may fluctuate. Your standard does not. Living from principle reduces mental noise. Fewer internal arguments. Less hesitation. More clarity. Clarity sharpens decisions. Better decisions reinforce. Discipline. Discipline beats emotion when impulse is not trusted blindly. Impulse often feels urgent. Urgency distorts perception. Distorted perception leads to poor judgment. Poor judgment creates regret. Regret drains focus. Focus supports consistency. Stillness strengthens principle. When impulse appears, pause. Slow your breathing. Observe the urge without acting. Impulse fades when not reinforced. Reinforcement strengthens it. That's the key. Restraint builds authority. Authority over yourself defines strength. Living from principle also requires humility. You will feel anger. You will feel fear. You will feel resistance. Principle does not deny these states. It regulates them. Regulation maintains direction. Direction determines outcome. Outcome reinforces identity. When principle leads, emotion becomes background. It no longer dictates behavior. It informs you without controlling you. This shift changes everything. You stop chasing motivation. You stop fearing discomfort. You stop reacting impulsively. You operate deliberately. Deliberate operation is calm. Calm strengthens clarity. Clarity supports control. Control builds discipline. Most people admire discipline in others. Few install principle in themselves. Installation requires repetition. Repetition builds identity. Identity stabilizes performance. Stable performance compounds over time. You have a choice. Let emotion define your path. Or let principle define your direction. One path fluctuates. The other compounds. Compounding creates strength. Strength reinforces discipline. Discipline sustains daily control. You stopped obeying mood. You paused before reacting. You set rules that do not move. You chose action over comfort. You controlled tone. You removed negotiation. You protected focus. You finished regardless of feeling. You repeated discipline daily. Now you live from principle, not impulse. Calm, measured, unemotional, disciplined. Discipline beats emotion. Live accordingly. Emotion will always be present. It will rise. It will fall. It will try to lead. Do not let it. Discipline is quiet. It does not argue. It enforces. You do not wait to feel ready. You act because it is required. You do not react to every impulse. You regulate first. You do not lower your standard under pressure. You protect it. From this moment forward, remove emotional obedience. Set your rule. Pause before reaction. Finish what you begin. Repeat tomorrow. Discipline beats emotion. Live accordingly.